Welcome back to episode 7 of the devlog. Today we basically we found our game, but it's not our game because it sucks.
Oh wow, so
I don't
harsh.
really know what to call it. It's basically like an incomplete version of like kind of like almost our idea of a game. It came out a while ago. It costs like $6 on Steam or something.
Around that. Intro rolled.
Yeah.
So basically, the game is not identical to ours. There's a lot of things that
No,
there's like a lot of like
it's
tiny
yeah.
details we're not gonna get into. I don't think. Specifically though, it is movement. It's got wall running. It's got climbing. It's got jump. It doesn't have double jump. It's got like vaulting
I
mechanics.
think
It's got
it does
like
have double jump.
does it have double jump? It's got sliding.
Yeah.
It's got all that stuff, right?
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
objective is one.
rudimentary just
Yeah, the basic idea is one person can run, one person can chase, and the other person, they tag each other and you get points, right? Very simple
yeah.
idea.
It's a very similar game mode to like the casual game mode that we have for tag,
hmm
which
But it's lacking. It's a Unity game. It's built by like one guy. It's
mhm.
lacking, perks, mods, abilities.
Yeah, it's
Real
lacking polish.
competitiveness. It's lacking like a ton of developmental updates. I think the game came out a couple years ago and it hasn't been changed since. So
Hmm.
it was more just like I guess a hobby project for the guy, and that's just a speculation. But it
Yeah.
hasn't really moved forward since its release.
Hmm. So that brings it up. Why are we talking about it? Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of the times in game development, you can develop a game and be working on a game, and then a similar game can come out, and then it's like, oh well, what then? What do you do then, right?
hmm
Like if a game like our game came out, do we just stop making our game? Do we stop developing? Do we try to pivot and build it into something else, right? Like when you start looking at like game development from like more of a business side, like that, you have to like wonder like, okay, well, what do we do now?
hmm
Um, which is kind of why we're being secretive for a long time about like
Yeah.
the name of our game and like kind of stuff about it, and because we don't want like a big company to come along and just build the game we've been describing in like these devlogs, and then
hmm
we just don't have a game to create anymore. But then they also don't do the like do it justice or do the job that we're trying to create with it,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then we're like stuck. Okay, well we can't really make our game because we already made it now, but like it's not the game we wanted, right? Because like the whole point of us making Tag is that it's a game we want to play. But so again, why were we talking about this little indie game? Well, it's because it's actually very similar to our game. Like a lot of the mechanics, a lot of like the ideas are similar. They're unpolished in terms of what we would want. Like ours would definitely feel a lot more fluid than just like I feel like just the mechanics at play. But I think I had a fun time playing it. It was it was
Yeah.
fun
No, it
to
definitely is
mess around
fun.
and play it.
It
Um,
definitely puts into perspective some of the ideas that we had.
mhm,
And kind of shows that
yeah.
what we designed in our heads and kind of like what we
Mhm,
wrote down in these notes and our documentation on the game kind of can be successful and can work in the real
mhm,
world, I guess. At the same time, it
yeah.
also shows you some things that also don't work, and some
Right.
of the ideas that maybe you had that you're like, oh, this would be really fun. You're like, this would never work in this game. Um,
Mhm,
especially with some of those perks and some of those abilities and some of just the playstyle in general, like the time wise and some of the
mhm,
juking up and mechanics and whatnot. You kind of can see
yeah.
more. It's more real.
Like one of the main things I took away was like map size is something we really need to take a look at because like right now our time is like 3 minutes and we have like a relatively large map. That's because we can move really quickly, right?
hmm
We have a pretty fast speed, and so you have to like balance a map to where like because like the smaller the more high stress it's gonna be, heart racing and like stuff it is, the smaller it
hmm
is and like the less room you have to move around. But the bigger it is, there's also more options that create and more ways to play the game. So it's kind of just like we'll have to take a look now at like really balancing out the maps and getting a really good map size that like makes sense. And like that's something that we could only figure out like if we had a prototype. We wouldn't have been able to know anything about like the map size and like having to figure out how to appropriately size it until after we already built a prototype and built a prototype map. And then even then, something like that, we just may never have had the perspective of, hey, maybe a smaller map works better. Um, but now that we've played a game that only offers like a small map and we've gotten to see what gameplay looks like, now it gives us like a fresh perspective on something like that. I think it's also just funny. We found a game that's like the game that we're describing, so I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like a funny topic we could bring up for an episode.
Yeah, so it's definitely unpolished. It's a Unity based game, so it's not Unreal like we're trying to build in.
Hmm.
We haven't tried contacting the developer or any of those kind of things.
Yeah,
But we did enjoy playing his game.
yeah,
It
it's really
also
good.
did. It was kind of an eye opener for me a little bit as far as like the necessity for game sense and the complexities that we're adding into the game as far as like perks
Hmm.
and abilities. It's like these are very
Yeah,
crucial things for replayability of the game that I
right.
believe the game that we played did not have much of, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
The game felt
Yeah,
very stale and got old. I mean, we only played it for one day for what, 2, 3, 4 hours.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
We
we haven't
we
booted up
already kind
since,
of
so it's like it's got
yeah.
no replayability. I would say maybe a little bit, but definitely we're gonna hopefully do stuff with our game to
Mhm.
hopefully kind of negate the lack of
Yeah.
replayability that
And like
the
the
game
ever
we
changing
have.
metas of like adding new perks and abilities that will just change metas every few weeks is like just one of the many ways we
Mm-hmm.
already planned to do that. And like we knew
Exactly.
this going into it because Titanfall, like our game mode in Titanfall was very much so the same kind of way. Like
Mm-hmm.
it eventually got stale and
Yeah.
like harder to play because a meta forms that becomes the meta, and then due to just like the limitations of the game, that's all there is to it, right?
Yeah.
Like there's only so much skill you can possess in like Titanfall or in like the parkour tag. Like
Mm-hmm.
like there's some jumps that you can make. It's like, oh well, if they can't make that, then you just kind of win.
Yeah.
Cool. But our game is like, okay, well now you can like have a grapple to like defeat that like spot, like,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and then but then some the people next game might not have a grapple, right? And so you figure that out. It's like, okay, well I can use spot this game, but this game they have grapples, so I can't use that spot, right? It adds so much more complexity to the game we already have.
Obviously,
Mhm.
it being not, I'm not trying to like downplay the developer, but it being unpolished does
Mhm.
lead to some things. Like I believe when we played, there was like it was like a deuces win rule, so you have to win by two.
Mhm. Oh
And I
yeah, yeah. We had a
believe
game
we
that like
played to 25, 30,
yeah, yeah.
something
We
around there.
played
We both he was
back
30,
and
I had
forth
30
because
because tagging was
mhm,
so unbalanced. It was so much easier to tag someone than it was to run away. Um,
mhm.
and so
Right. That's another thing for our game.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
like
So some of
balancing its side,
these,
which I feel like we've already done in theory. Like I
mm,
don't want to just like play a game and then go immediately go adjust everything in our document because we already kind of understood that that would be the
yeah.
case, and we have like an idea of balance it, and then once we like get to play it with our ideas, then we can further adjust it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I think it was mostly just like a fun thing we got to do, and
Yeah,
it's
it was
like
definitely a fun experience, and I would recommend it
it's
to
fun to
anybody
test.
if you're.
It's good to revisit like the core idea of our game,
Mm-hmm.
right? I wanted to do that in Titanfall, just go back and like try to do the game mode in Titanfall again to
Mm-hmm.
like get and understand like the same feelings
Servers
we
are
were
all gone,
feeling for the game. Yeah,
so you'd have to
but
do it in
but then
North
now
Star.
that we've played it, yeah, now that we've played it in parkour tag, it's like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
now it's like I remember the feeling of like what you're supposed to feel when playing the game
Yeah,
and like the
exactly.
strategy ideas to it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, like during Black Friday, I'm sure this dev will be out by Black Friday. Before then,
Oh yeah.
if it's on sale on Steam, buy it. It's pretty good. I'd recommend. Um,
Hmm.
if you just want like some fun experience with some friends, the online is not good. It's got basically direct connect only.
Yeah,
So
it's direct connect play with friends, but it's 1v1, so
yeah, so you shouldn't be too
just
bad.
grab a friend and play it.
Exactly.
basically.
See if you can figure out all the text that we exploited in the game. We won't say any of them right now, but you'll find them.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that
Yeah,
wraps up
perfect.
this episode of the devlog. And we just needed a quick one today because we couldn't tell Ethan is sick. And if you didn't watch the devcast, Ethan is sick. So, you know, we wanted
uh,
we wanted to do like a quicker thing this week because we also record these devlogs live with the devcast. So if you're watching the devcast, you'll be a part of these devlogs and you hear like the unedited version of everything. So that's kind of
exactly.
cool. Um, so yeah, we just wanted a more quick topic this week. We're trying to make things quicker so we don't have like 20-minute long devlogs and like stuff. Like we want it more bite size, I guess. More bite
Exactly.
size than it's been.
Truly.
Anyways, this has been week 7 of the devlog. See you guys next week for another devlog.
See you.
Peace.